Hello, this is my Chapter 10 summary for class. The chapter discussing the relationship between parent and child in sport, or when it comes to sport. So, the overall chapter, point one, or the takeaway number one, is the overall chapter, which is kind of discussing the relationship and dynamic that families will have when it comes to sport. The quote being, "For many families, sport consumes a significant portion of their leisure activities, including the enactment, consumption, and performance of sports." And reflecting on it, yeah, that seems pretty accurate. I have what I would say two households. My parents divorced when I was two, so I have two different households, and that means I've had two different relationships when it's come to sports. In my mom's house, I have my stepdad, who is a huge sports fan, and then my younger sister and brother, my sister, who is currently 13, and my brother, who is currently 10, both play sports. My sister just got done doing gymnastics for years, while my brother plays baseball and occasionally other stuff. And then in my other household is my dad, who we watch sports together as well. And then I have my stepbrother, who played soccer and did swimming in high school, and my stepsister, who grew up playing volleyball. So in my two different families, there's just been a whole uh, uh, dynamic or presence of sports in each household. Uh, and it basically is my life is sports, and it's because of the encouragement and relationship I've had with my family when it comes to sports. Getting deeper into it, we have point two, which is like in today's times, how much money and involvement there is when it comes to parents putting their children into sports. We see the quote, "For example, families that travel from state to state to compete in youth soccer can spend as much as $30,000 when factoring in expenses associated with traveling the games, hotel costs for weekend tournaments, payment to elite coaches, and everyday expenditures associated with being on the road." So obviously, that is a bit extreme. That's not everybody's experience when it comes to sport, but it's not, you know, only a couple of people. There are people who pay a lot of money for their kids to be in sports. Um, $30,000 is, I think, an insane amount of money uh, a year on sports. Even hell, almost a lifetime on sports. I get if your kid is most likely going to be or is getting prospect or is getting predicted to be a professional athlete, going to make major leagues in whatever sport they play in. I could see, putting the investment of $30,000 in now to, make millions down the road. But that's just like, I couldn't imagine growing up spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on playing sports. But that's the experience for a lot of people, and I think that's just crazy. Quote number three comes from the interview with Daryl Burnett, the clinical psychologist and board member of Little League of America. I believe Daryl here makes a really good point, and I really, really respect this, and I wish more. Like, I was lucky enough to have parents who pushed me to do well, but were still respectful and still caring enough for me. And I think what they did is the same perspective that Daryl Burnett has here, which his quote is, "I will not allow my child's athleticism, or lack thereof, to become the definition of my child's self-worth." Meaning, sometimes we see, I remember, I had moments whether it was my team or another team, of just parents railing on their kid or just going off or being way too harsh, because that's how they viewed their child. They viewed their child as an athlete, and they should be the best, and there's no exceptions. And I think that's just flat out wrong. Um, I know, of course, I wanted to be of course, I wanted to be a professional athlete, but it was pretty evident that I wasn't going to be at a young age. Not that I was that bad, but I wasn't, ever like the top of my team in any sport I played. But my parents, they would push me to do well, and they go, just, try your hardest. But, they were also there to support me when things did not go well, and that's something I wish we saw more of, is what Daryl Burnett says. But quote number 4 is the reason why we see this, which the quote is, "Parents are likely to encourage sports participation because of its perceived benefits they anticipate their child will receive, as well as personal benefits that come as byproducts of their participation." So, yes, typically parents put their kids into sports because it teaches them life lessons, but it also makes them friends and learn how to work around others and work as a team, and just kind of socialize in the real world. But some parents think that if they push their kids hard enough and they spend enough money buying enough coaches, enough training time, that their kid can be one day the next LeBron James or Mike Trout or Wayne Gretzky or Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, any of those guys, because those guys are making hundreds. Michael Jordan has made over hundreds of millions of dollars in his career, in his life. I believe he's a billionaire now because of his investment in the Hornets. But they think their kid could be the next all-time great, and if their kid becomes very rich and very famous, then that parent will most likely get a return on their investment, for lack of a better term. So, yes, while some parents are level-headed and fair and see the genuine benefits in putting their kid in sports, some parents are too hard because they think their kid could be the next star making hundreds of millions of dollars. And then finally, we come into the last point, which is, I think, a fair assumption. Sports can sometimes get a little too negatively talked about when it comes to bad parents. But this last quote from the chapter makes a good point. The type of parental pressure or support an athlete receives will often depend on the level of involvement the family has in sports. For example, parents with moderate levels of involvement create the ideal sporting experience because they are able to find a balance between the competitive and enjoyment objectives from sport participation. Meaning the ideal parent is what I believe I kind of had, which was a parent who pushes you, who says, okay, you can do better than this. This is what you did wrong. You need to work on this. But it's still, saying, go out there, have fun. It's just a game. And that is the ideal parent. I agree with the book here. That's a big takeaway. If you're kind of wondering, if you're going to have kids and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to have them play sports, of course, because it's sports. What kind of parent am I going to be like? What parent should I be like? I think that's what you should be like. I think you should, tell your kids, hey, this is what you did wrong. But also go, hey, it's a game. Go out there and have fun. And so I think chapter 10 that's my chapter 10 summary, just kind of talking about, parents are sometimes way too hard on their kids. But chapter 10 talks about the fact that sports are a pretty big family event, or a pretty big area for families, whether it's just watching sports like I do these days with my parents, all 4 of them, because of my 2 different households, or whether it's, back in my younger days when I'd go play and, parents, they would talk to me and say, this is what you're doing wrong, but, also go out there and have fun. So, thank you for listening.